They say you don't really know the road until you've spent a night alone on it. Not the daytime highway, where everyone's in a rush and the sun bakes the asphalt. I mean the real road. The one that comes alive after midnight, when the CB chatter dies out and the hum of your tires is the only thing keeping you company. That's the road I know. Been driving trucks for about 15 years now, long hauls mostly, coast to coast, whatever keeps the wheels turning. And the funny thing is, no matter how far I go, the nights all start to blend together. Same truck stops, same burnt coffee, same wind cutting through the cracks in the cab. But every now and then, something happens that reminds you the road isn't as empty as it seems. It was one of those nights. Late August, somewhere in eastern Arizona. The air was thick with heat, even after midnight, and the desert smelled like dust and engine oil. I was running behind schedule, dropped the load in Oklahoma City, and was hauling empty toward Barstow to pick up again the next day. The kind of run that makes you question your life choices around the fourth cup of truck stop coffee. I'd been on the road 14 hours, eyelids starting to feel like sandpaper. So when I saw the faded green sign, exit 47, gas, food, lodging, I figured I'd better pull off before I started seeing double. The ramp led to one of those half-forgotten pit stops, a two-pump gas station, a flickering diner sign, and a vending machine that probably hadn't been restocked since the Obama years. No other trucks, no cars, just me, my rig, and the buzzing of old fluorescent lights. I parked near the diesel pumps, killed the engine, and stepped out into the dry night air. The silence hit me first, a heavy, still kind of silence that only the desert can give you. It's strange how quiet can feel loud when you've been listening to an engine for that long. Inside, the station was lit by yellow bulbs that hummed louder than the cooler. A tired cashier sat behind a counter, flipping through a magazine without looking up. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the glass pot, paid, and stepped back outside. That's when I saw him. He was standing near the edge of the lot by the payphone, the kind that should have been ripped out years ago. Tall, lean guy, maybe mid-30s, wearing a denim jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't using the phone, just standing there, hands in his pockets, staring out toward the desert. The streetlight above him flickered every few seconds, casting him in and out of shadow. For a moment, I thought maybe his car had broken down. Then he turned his head, slow and calm, and nodded. "Evening," he said. His voice was steady, polite, like he'd been waiting his turn to talk. "Evening," I answered. He glanced at my rig. "You heading west?" "Yeah," I said. "Barstow." He nodded again, like that confirmed something he already knew. "Any chance you could give me a lift that way? Been waiting out here a while." Now, I don't usually take passengers. Company policy says no riders, and experience says even less. You never know who you're picking up. Could be harmless, could be trouble. But something about this guy didn't feel like trouble. He looked worn out, not dangerous, just tired. "Where you headed exactly?" I asked. "Barstow," he said. "Got family there. My sister." It wasn't the first time I'd heard that line, but something in his tone felt genuine, flat, matter of fact. And truth be told, I could use someone to talk to if I wanted to stay awake till sunrise. "All right," I said finally. "Hop in." He smiled, small, polite, like he'd been expecting that answer all along. "Appreciate it," he said, picking up his old canvas backpack from the curb. We climbed into the cab, and for a second I caught a faint smell, dust, leather, maybe tobacco, like he'd been living out of that bag for weeks. He settled into the passenger seat without a word, setting the pack between his boots. When I fired up the engine, he leaned back and looked out the window. The road out of the gas station was empty, stretching west like a ribbon of silver under the moonlight. We didn't talk for the first few miles, just the hum of the tires and the low growl of the engine. I didn't mind the silence, it's part of the job, but something about him made me curious. After 10 minutes, he spoke. "Don't see many drivers stop at that station anymore." I shrugged. Guess I was tired enough not to notice. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's easy to miss things out here." There was something about his voice, calm, careful, like every word was weighed before it left his mouth. He didn't sound nervous, didn't fidget, just watched the horizon like a man who'd been staring at it his whole life. After a while, he turned to me. "Name's Eli." "Jack," I said. He nodded. "Appreciate the ride, Jack." "Don't mention it," I said. "Long way to Barstow." "Yeah," he replied quietly, "but I've been on longer roads." I wasn't sure what that meant, so I didn't ask. Just kept my eyes on the highway, letting the steady rhythm of the road fill the space between us. The CB crackled now and then, but no one was talking. Just static. Desert miles rolling by. We passed a sign that said Needles, 80 miles. The air outside shimmered with heat, even though it was past midnight. The kind of dry, empty landscape that makes you feel like the last man on earth. Eli leaned his head against the window, watching the dark blur of the desert. "You ever get the feeling the road's got its own memory?" he said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "Like, every tire that's rolled over it, every mile somebody's driven. It all adds up. Sometimes it feels like the road remembers what happened on it." I chuckled softly. "You've been out here a while, huh?" He smiled. "Long enough." Then he went quiet again. There wasn't anything strange yet, just a long drive, a quiet stranger, and the hum of the wheels. But something in the air had shifted. The night felt heavier, the silence thicker, and I didn't realize until much later that somewhere between that gas station and the California border, the road started remembering me too. The road stretched ahead, a pale ribbon cutting through miles of darkness. Every few minutes, the headlights caught the outline of a cactus or the glint of an old road sign. Then it was just black again. The world outside the windshield didn't seem real anymore, just a loop of the same desert playing on repeat. Eli hadn't said a word in half an hour. He just sat there, watching the horizon with that same distant calm. Every so often, he'd tap his fingers lightly on the door, like he was keeping rhythm with something only he could hear. I tried to fill the silence. "So, you said you've been on longer roads. You a driver too?" He turned to me, slow and measured. "Used to be," he said. "Long time ago." "What did you haul?" "Didn't matter much. It was more about getting somewhere. Or maybe getting away." I smiled. "Ain't that always the way?" He didn't smile back, but there was a flicker in his eyes, like the thought had landed somewhere deep. We rolled through the desert in silence again. The CB crackled to life with a faint voice, some trucker warning about a deer near mile 212, and then it went dead. The kind of static that sounds like wind whispering through wires. I sipped what was left of my coffee, which by then tasted like burnt rubber. The caffeine didn't help much. The miles were blending together. To keep myself awake, I started talking again. Tough to make a living out here these days. Fuel's high, pays low, and half the dispatchers think we're machines. Eli nodded slowly. "You ever think about stopping? Driving?" He nodded again. "Sure. Every week," I said with a laugh. "But what else am I gonna do? Road's all I got." He looked out the window again. "Funny thing about the road," he said softly. "Sometimes it doesn't let go." Something in the way he said that made my neck tighten. It wasn't the words, it was the calmness behind them. Like he was talking about something he knew too well. We passed an old billboard half swallowed by sand. The kind that once promised next diner, 10 miles, but hadn't seen pain in decades. There was nothing around, just the soft glow of my dashboard and the distant hum of tires on asphalt. Then Eli asked, "You believe in déjà vu?" "Sometimes," I said. "Feels like I've seen half these roads before, even when I haven't." He nodded. "That's the thing. Places remember you, even if you don't remember them." It wasn't the first weird thing he'd said, but it was the first that really stuck. Because I'd started to notice something too. The signs, the landscape, even the curves of the road. It all felt familiar, like I'd been here before, years ago, maybe on a night just like this. Same stars, same air, same hum of loneliness in my chest. I shook it off. Maybe it was just fatigue. Long hauls mess with your head. A few hours passed. The fuel gauge dropped below a quarter, so I told Eli we'd stop soon. He just nodded. "There's a rest area up ahead," he said. He said it like he already knew. "Yeah." I asked, "You been through here lately?" He hesitated. "Once. A long time ago." We finally saw the glow of sodium lights on the horizon. A small rest stop tucked off the interstate. Just a few vending machines, 2 picnic tables, and a restroom building lit by a buzzing lamp. I pulled the rig into the lot, the gravel crunching under the tires. The clock on the dash said 3:27 a.m. The world was utterly still. I killed the engine and rubbed my eyes. "Gonna stretch my legs?" I said. Eli didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Mind if I step out too?" "Go ahead." He climbed down quietly, moving with the slow ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. He stood there, breathing in the desert air. "You ever notice how the night feels heavier out here?" he asked. "Guess that's what happens when there's nothing but sky." He looked around, eyes scanning the horizon. Then he said something that made me pause. "Sometimes I think the desert keeps secrets, buries them under sand until the wind decides to give him back." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just chuckled and said, "You sound like a poet." "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I've just spent too much time waiting in places like this." I leaned against the truck, listening to the faint buzz of the lamp. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled. The sound echoed across the emptiness. Then Eli asked, "You ever pick someone up and wonder if you were supposed to?" The question caught me off guard. I said, "Supposed to?" He nodded, like maybe the road brings certain people together for a reason. I shrugged. I don't believe much in fate. Out here it's just miles and luck. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, maybe that's all it is." We stood there for a minute more, quiet. Then he turned toward the edge of the parking lot and said, "I'll be right back. Need to make a call." I pointed to the restroom building. "Payphone's probably dead." He didn't answer, just walked off into the shadows, toward the dim light where the asphalt met the sand. I waited. A minute passed, then 5. No sign of him. I got back in the cab, figuring he'd be right back. But he didn't come. The minutes kept ticking. 3:42 a.m. 3:51. Still nothing. The desert was silent again, except for the hum of the vending machines. That same heavy stillness from the gas station had returned, the kind that presses against your chest. Finally, I got out and looked around. No Eli, just footprints in the sand, leading away from the truck, and stopping halfway toward the open desert, like he'd just vanished. I stood there a long time, staring at those footprints disappearing into nothing. The wind had started to pick up, carrying bits of sand that erased them one grain at a time. And I remember thinking, maybe the desert really did keep its secrets. I called out once, twice. "Eli." No answer. When I walked back to the cab, I noticed his backpack was still on the passenger seat. It was small and worn, frayed at the straps. For a long moment, I just looked at it. Then I opened it. Inside were a few things. A folded flannel shirt, a pocket knife, and a photo. An old one, sun-faded, showing a young man standing beside a semi-truck with the name Eli Motors stenciled on the side. The man in the photo looked just like him, only younger. On the back, written in shaky ink, were 3 words: "Keep the road." I sat there a long time, engine off, lights dim. The desert was perfectly still, except for the wind brushing the side of the truck. I didn't know if I should wait, or drive, or report it. Something told me to leave, so I did. I put the photo back in the bag, set it on the floor, and eased back onto the highway. As the truck rolled up to speed, the CB came alive with a faint voice through the static. "You out there, Eli? You copy? Been years since I heard your handle." Then it went dead again. I didn't say a word the rest of the drive. Didn't even turn on the radio. Just watched the road roll under the headlights. Mile after mile, while somewhere behind me, the desert erased the last of the footprints. I made it to Barstow just after sunrise. The sky was turning the color of rusted copper, and the first heat of the day was already starting to rise off the asphalt. After a night like that, everything felt a little unreal. The road, the light, even my own hands on the wheel. Sometimes, after driving too long, the world starts to feel like it's still moving even when you stop. I parked at the distribution yard, dropped off my paperwork, and told myself to forget about it. About Eli, the rest stop, the empty footprints. Guys disappear all the time. Maybe he got picked up by someone else. Maybe he just walked off into the desert because he wanted to. But the truth is, the thought wouldn't let me go. All that morning, while I was waiting for dispatch to load my next run, I kept glancing at the passenger's seat. His backpack was still there, the one with the faded photo inside. I should have handed it to the police or left it at the yard. Instead, I kept it with me. By noon, I couldn't stand the not knowing anymore. So I drove over to the nearest sheriff's office, a small brown building that looked more like a diner than a station. The deputy behind the desk looked up when I came in. "Morning, what can I do for you?" I picked someone up last night, out near exit 47. Guy said his name was Eli." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "You found someone or lost someone?" "Picked him up," I said. But then he disappeared at a rest stop, left his bag in my truck. He leaned back, chewing on a pen cap. "Disappear, huh? You mean he ran off?" "Guess so," I said. "Didn't look like he was running from something. Just walked off." He nodded slowly. "That stretch eats people sometimes. You wouldn't believe how many go missing out there. Heat, dehydration, bad luck. Take your pick." I handed over the photo from the backpack. This was in his stuff. Looked familiar? He studied it for a while, then shook his head. "Old picture. Truck looks like it's from the 70s. "Yeah," I said. He looked older now, but it's him. "I'm sure of it." The deputy squinted. "You're sure this is from his bag?" "Yeah." He tapped the photo. "That's weird. We had a call about this guy years ago. Different name, though. Daniel, I think. Something about a drifter with memory problems. Used to hang around truck stops, tell stories about being a driver." "Memory problems?" I asked. "Yeah. Hit his head in an accident. Family said he'd sometimes forget who he was, mix himself up with this old man or someone he knew. Folks said he carried a photo like this. That line on the back, 'Keep the road.' That was something his dad used to say on the CB. I felt the air leave my lungs. So he's real." The deputy nodded. "Oh, he's real. Comes and goes. Sometimes folks pick him up, give him a ride. He wanders for a while, then turns up again a few towns over. Always with that same story. Always with that same look." On the way back to my rig, I couldn't stop thinking about what the deputy had said. It made sense, more sense than any ghost story ever could. A man with a broken memory, living between the lines of his own history. Half in the present, half in a past he couldn't shake. But even knowing that, something still didn't sit right. The way he'd said certain things. The road doesn't let go. Places remember you. Those weren't the words of a confused man. They were the words of someone who'd been out there too long, lost in the hum of the wheels and the weight of miles. That night, after I picked up my next load, I hit the highway again. Sunset painted the desert gold, and by the time darkness fell, the world was nothing but road and sky. The cab lights glowed dim and warm, the hum of the tires steady and low. It felt almost peaceful, almost, because somewhere around midnight, as I passed through a long, empty stretch near the California line, the CB crackled again. Static, then a voice. "Breaker 19, you out there, Jack?" My hand froze over the dial. That was my handle. No one knew it on this channel. I hadn't used it all night. "Go ahead," I said cautiously. The static thickened. Then, faintly, "Keep the road." And then, silence. I didn't stop the truck. Didn't pull over. Didn't even breathe for a few seconds. After that, the radio went dead, and I never heard the voice again. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe some driver had overheard me talking the day before. Or maybe Eli's mind wasn't the only one the road played tricks on. I don't know. All I know is, I kept driving. Every driver's got that one story they don't tell until the miles have worn them down. The kind that doesn't sound like much until you're the one behind the wheel at 3 a.m., staring into the dark. This was mine. Sometimes, when the highway's empty and the world's asleep, I still think about him. About that quiet man with the soft voice and the steady eyes. About the way he looked out the window like he'd already been everywhere there was to go. And every time I pass exit 47, I can't help glancing toward that old gas station. The lights are always flickering. The payphone's still there. And once, just once, I thought I saw someone standing by it again. A tall man in a denim jacket, waiting in the shadows, watching the road. I didn't stop, just kept rolling west, into the dark. The hum of the engine steady under my hands, and the echo of his voice still hanging in the air. Sometimes the road doesn't let go. That's where my story ends tonight. If you'd like to hear more from the road, hit subscribe and rest easy, my friend.